YouTube, what's up? This is your boy EJ, SwampCast co-host. We wanted to hop on and give you guys a March Madness preview of the Florida Gators, your SEC tournament champs. I got my SEC tournament champs shirt just came in the mail. Wanted to give you a preview of the Final Four, looking at our matchup with the Auburn Tigers. But first, before we do that, we want to take a little bit of a trip down memory lane. How do we get here? How did we make the Final Four in 2025? An incredible run by this Florida Gator basketball team. And real quick, I just wanted to show you this picture. This is me at the last Sweet 16 site in San Francisco. As some of you may know, I am on the West Coast. So as soon as I saw that we were in the Sweets or in the West Regional, if we won in Raleigh, which we did, we were going to be selected to go to San Francisco. And so had to hop on a flight and get over there. So there you go. So first, what I wanted to do was let's just take a look at our journey here and how did we get to the Final Four. And first, I wanted to start by looking at some of the analytics. So as you all know, going into this tournament, there was a huge emphasis on analytics and particularly KenPom, which is sort of the holy grail of basketball analytics, right? And the stat was 21 of the last 22 national champions were either ranked in the KenPom top 3 or UConn, because UConn is like the only team that has been ranked like outside of the top 3 that has just won the title a couple of times. But the national champion has always been inside the top 3 going into the tournament, or UConn. And going into the NCAA tournament, Florida, believe it or not, we were ranked number 2. We also had the number 1 ranked offense going into the NCAA tournament. We've dropped now to number 3. With the number 2 ranked offense. Duke has reclaimed having the number 1 overall offense in college basketball, according to KenPom Analytics. But we are still currently at number 3. And you can sort of see, so this net raking adjusted efficiency margin means what would be, how many points you would be favored by if you were to play the average team in the country. And the average team in the country, there are 360 teams. So whoever's ranked 180 in KenPom, how many points would you be favored by if both teams were playing at their best? And right now, the analytics are just off the charts for the top 4 teams in the Final Four. I don't know if this is the first time in history that KenPom's top 4 are in the Final Four, but it's a pretty strong indicator that this year in particular, the 4 best teams have made the Final Four, and it's going to be an epic showing in San Antonio. But the first thing that we wanted to do, let's take a look at how Florida got here, right? So first, let's take a look at our path. So if you look at all of our games since February 25th, that was the last time we lost. We lost to Georgia on February 25th. And when you take a look at that, since then, we've won 10 games in a row. Here's a crazy stat. All 10 games have been against teams that have been in the NCAA tournament. Think about that. I mean, obviously the last 4 because we played tournament teams, but even before the tournament, we won 6 games in a row, 3 to close the regular season and 3 in the SEC tournament to have a 10-game winning streak. We beat Texas A&M, who was a number 4 seed. We beat Alabama, who was a number 2 seed. We beat Alabama actually twice. We beat Ole Miss, who was a Sweet 16 team. They were a number 6 seed. We beat Missouri, who was a number 6 seed as well. We had a sort of a revenge win in the SEC tournament title game against Tennessee. We beat Norfolk State, who was uh, a number 16 seed. They were ranked number 178. We beat Duke, or excuse me, not Duke, UConn, um, in the round of 32. We beat Maryland in the first game of the Sweet 16. We beat Texas Tech in the Elite Eight. And now we are going to take on Auburn in the Final Four. And Ken Palm, he does these based on these analytics. He looks at who's favored, and he favors us to beat Auburn 81 to 80. And we have a 52% chance to beat Auburn. And that seems about right to me. Honestly, you could teeter totter that either way. Both Auburn and Florida are going to be an incredible matchup. But let's take a look at um, each of the 4 games that we played prior to getting to this Auburn game, because I kind of want to take a look at how this journey to the Final Four um, happened. So when you take a look at our game against Norfolk State, so he splits these games up into quarters. Which honestly, guys, I would love if college basketball went to 4 quarters. But if you look at how this team has gotten to where we are, let's go back and take a look at it from this standpoint right here. I kind of like looking at this view on ESPN. So, taking a look at these stats here. Let's take a look at the team stats. So, this game was all about Florida immediately imposing and showing that they are clearly the better team of the 2 teams. We got out to a 30-point lead. I think it was around 42 to 14, 44 to 14, something like that. And then we pretty much played to the level of our opponent for the remainder of the game, the last 30 minutes. Um, and the game was pretty much a dead even heat for the remainder of the game. Norfolk State did go on a 12-1 run to end the first half. We outscored them by 5 in the second half. And you pretty much just want to get through that first game if you're a 1 versus 16, particularly this year where the number 1 seeds just completely outclassed the 16 seeds in every facet of the game. You wanted to get out of that game unfazed, uninjured, and you wanted to go to the second round fully healthy. And Todd Golden wasn't happy with this performance. Uh, Closing and sealing the deal and going into that game against UConn. But nevertheless, we were able to dominate this game. We got 21 offensive rebounds in this game, which was absolutely insane. We missed 31 shots. So to get 21 rebounds on 31 missed shots, that's like 67% of your missed shots resulted in an offensive rebound. That's absolutely incredible. We did out rebound Norfolk State and only had 12 turnovers, which was pretty good, and got to the second round where we took on the UConn Huskies. Now, the UConn game, let's go back and take a look at this UConn game, because this was a game that I think a lot of people um, just really had some heartburn. And I watched this game at the Houston Gator Bar in Houston, Texas, actually. The biggest stat in this game as to why this game was so close, take a look at the field goal attempts. This tells you the story right here. UConn shot the ball 64 times. Florida shot the ball 50 times. Think about that. Like, shot, 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 shot. Do that 10 more times. That's how many more shot attempts UConn got than Florida. Dan Hurley is an incredible coach. He knew in order for us to win this game, there's a couple of things that we're going to have to do. We're going to have to get more shots off than Florida. That's number one. And number two, a majority of Florida's offensive rebounds do not come off of 3-point attempts. They come off of actual 2-point attempts that one of their big men just is able to recollect and put it back up and score. Let's eliminate Florida's ability to do that. Let's eliminate Florida's 2-point field goals. And when you go back and you take a look at how UConn decided to defend the interior players for Florida, Alex Condon did not have his best day. He only scored 5 points in this game. He only attempted 2 field goal attempts in this game. I mean, Alex Condon, this is a guy that scored 27 against Alabama just a few weeks ago. Ruben Chinyelu only scores 6 points. He only attempted the shot 4 times. And then Thomas Houck, as you all know, one of our better bigs, our most versatile player, he only attempts 4 shots and he only scores 7 points. Hanlockton comes off the bench, attempts 3 shots, misses all of them, and he scores 0 points. So across all of our 4 big men that played in this game, they scored a total of 18 points. That's not going to get it done in major competition, but that was Dan Hurley's coaching and Dan Hurley's um, strategy going into that game, and it worked out really, really well. Um, Alex Caravan, Liam McNeely, Hassan Diarra, those guys really played. Terrace Reed, also number 5. These guys played tremendous defense on the interior. UConn slowed the game down. We gave a comparison to UConn of Tennessee in terms of the pace that they like to play. Um, I think UConn is 343rd in the nation in offensive tempo. Tennessee's like 346. So, uh, very, very, very methodical, slow pace team, and that enabled them to really slow that game down. But then again, Walter Clayton Jr. shows up in the biggest moments, hitting 2 massive threes late in that game to seal the game. Will Richard also had a huge poke out of Liam McNeely. Condon hit him on the deep outlet that put Florida up by 3. Um, we never trailed again in that game and wrote to a big victory and headed to the Sweet 16, where we took on the Maryland Terrapins. Now, Maryland, um, Florida had a very interesting Sweet 16. Of all the 4 number 1 seeds that had 2 Sweet 16 games, Florida was the only team to play 2 KenPom top 10 teams in the Sweet 16. Although Maryland was a number 4 seed, if you go back and look at their KenPom rating, Maryland was ranked number 10, or is currently ranked number 10. I think they were like number 9 actually in the KenPom ratings when we played them. As you can see, Texas Tech there at number 9. Maryland, as a team, uh, uh, you know, had a very unique challenge for Florida with Reese and Queen in the interior, particularly coming off of a game where our 4 big men did not really play that well. And so what we needed to do was we needed to outmuscle them. We needed to get rebounds, and we needed to wear them out with our depth. And that's something that I think we accomplished in this game. The second half, we were really able to open up and get a lead on Maryland. And anytime we get a lead in the second half, it's just a little bit overwhelming for the opposing team because they typically don't have multiple guys that can come in and give you a lot of quality minutes. As you can kind of see, Harris Smith and Geronimo are the only guys from the Maryland bench that came in to spell significant minutes for Maryland. So looking at this Maryland game, this wasn't an easy matchup. We had a couple of people actually picking Maryland to upset us. Uh, CBS, I think, one of their commentators picked Maryland to beat us. So that was a really, really unique test with the starting five of Maryland, including Gillespie, who's apparently now headed to Tennessee, Selton Miguel, Rice, and then Queen and Reese. But we're able to win that game 87-71, and then move on to play Texas Tech, which let's go back and take a look at that Texas Tech game. Um, Obviously, this game was just absolutely, I'm sure all of you have watched all the highlights. It was absolutely incredible. Texas Tech took a page out of the Dan Hurley playbook and said, hey, we got to get more shot attempts off than Florida. And look at this, 15 more shot attempts in Florida. Now, we did make up for it with the free throw disparity. We shot 14 more free throws than Texas Tech, but Texas Tech did miss a couple of key front end of one and ones that opened the door for Florida to make a comeback. Texas Tech also got on the offensive glass and beat us up there 14-11. Typically, we will get more offensive rebounds than our opponents. But a lot of people are saying, how did Texas Tech manhandle us in the paint? Well, McCaslin, their head coach, is again, when you're in the Sweet 16, you're in the Elite Eight, you're playing against really good teams and really good coaches. McCaslin's game plan was very simple. We've got two post up guys in JT Toppin and Darion Williams, guys that can put their back to the rim on the block and back you down and get points in the paint off of baby hooks. Not too many teams in the country have that unique lineup. And when Thomas Houck was in the game, what we saw was Thomas Houck isn't our he's, I think, our most indispensable player in terms of the value he brings. He plays just an incredible array of you know skill set in terms of his ability to shoot the three. He can defend all five positions. He rebounds. He's one of the best rebounders in the country. He has one of the highest basketball IQs. But one of the unique mismatch issues that you have with a guy like Thomas Houck is very similar to what you're going to have with any player of Thomas Houck's phenotype. And that is when you're playing a bully ball type player like a Darion Williams on the low block, Houck is going to have issues trying to defend him one on one. And Darion Williams ended up scoring 23 points, 9 of 18 field goals. He hit three threes, had two offensive rebounds. And Thomas Houck was challenged. Now, Houck did get a couple of good block shots in this game. He had a couple of key defensive stops and a couple of huge rebounds late in the game to seal the game. But for a majority of that second half, Darion Williams was having sort of his way on the low block against Houck. Um, and I don't really see any other team left in in the Final Four other than maybe potentially Houston, who's got two big guys that both of them hit you on a post up with their back against the basket. Um, just an absolutely incredible um, performance. So, looking at, I had to make sure we're recording this this video here. I was like, oh my god, we're not recording. All right. So again, we had to play two Ken Palm top 10 teams in the Sweet 16. Now, I will say this. I think, and then when you look at these rankings, look at this. Texas Tech, the fifth best offense in the country. So people are like, how is Florida not? But guys, we had to play a team that won almost 30 games and they beat Houston. They were the last team to beat Houston. Look at Houston. Houston has won, I don't know, 17 in a row or something crazy like that. The last team to beat Houston was Texas Tech. And spoiler alert, Texas Tech beat Houston in overtime in Houston. Now, Houston did come on the road to Lubbock and beat Texas Tech by 8, to return the favor. But Texas Tech was the last team to beat Houston. And you saw what Houston did to Tennessee. Okay. Texas Tech is a tremendous basketball team. We cannot take anything away from them. It would be sort of disrespectful to kind of throw Texas Tech out and say, "Oh, Florida didn't dominate them like Duke beat Alabama." Okay, spoiler alert, guys. Let's take a look at all these teams' paths from the Sweet 16 on. Duke beat Arizona and they beat Alabama. Now, Arizona um, and Texas Tech, in my opinion, are equal, even type teams. Arizona beat Texas Tech in the Big 12 tournament. Arizona has turned it on lately, and Arizona is 12th in KenPom right now, with a 12th rated offense, 36th ranked defense, and they have Love, who's he's like a Walter Clayton type of guy. He can just take over a game himself. And that game was actually relatively close for Duke. It was a 5 or 6 point game late in that game, and Duke was able to seal the win. But hey, Arizona and Texas Tech are on the same level. Then Duke played Alabama. They buzzsawed Alabama, beat them by 20. But remember, Florida also played Alabama very recently in the SEC tournament and also beat them by 22. So, we can't give Duke credit for winning by 20 and discredit the fact that Florida also has a 20-point win over Alabama very recently. Also beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa, by the way. Houston, given that Houston and Florida were the 3 and 4 ranked number 1 seeds, we had sort of the toughest uh, road to the Final Four because Houston had to go through Gonzaga as the number 8 seed, and you can kind of see Gonzaga currently is 8th in KenPom. Like when you're 8th, so how do you determine your seed? 8 times 4, because there's 4 different regions, is 32. So you go 32 to 29 is what you should be if you're the 8th ranked team in terms of your ranking. So basically, the committee said that Gonzaga is like the 32nd best team in the country by giving them a number 8 seed, when, spoiler alert, they were 8th in KenPom. UConn, on the other hand, was right around the 32, ranked number 32 in KenPom. So they should have technically, if you're seeding based on KenPom, should have gotten a number 8 seed. Now, UConn was the defending national champs, who I think has the best game planning strategic coach in Dan Hurley as their coach. So that was another sort of mental game that we had to play. So us and Houston had a very difficult 8 seed that we had to go through. Houston also had to play um, Tennessee in the regional final, a Tennessee team that we had also beaten twice. We had beaten Tennessee by 30 earlier in the season. Ironically enough, we had a 34-15 lead at halftime in the first matchup that we played Tennessee back in January. Houston also had a 34-15 lead against Tennessee in this game. Both first halves were very similar. Tennessee couldn't hit anything. They just, I don't know what happened. But the Houston defense really just shut Tennessee down completely. Tennessee did make a little bit of a comeback there in the second half um, to play Houston even, but you just can't get down by 19 points. Houston also went through Purdue and needed a buzzer beater actually to beat Purdue 62-60 to get to the Elite Eight. Auburn went through the state of Michigan to get to the Sweet 16, which is kind of an interesting situation, having to beat Michigan and Michigan State. Auburn beat Michigan. I think they beat them by double digits. Let's go back and check. Yeah, 78-65. And then they beat Michigan State 70-64. Michigan was the Big Ten tournament champs. Michigan State was the regular season champs in the Big Ten, and Auburn beat both those teams. Now, Michigan State did make somewhat of a little bit of a comeback in the second half, but Auburn was just too strong for them. Michigan had a 9-point lead, 48-39 in the second half, but Auburn just completely overwhelmed them with their speed and talent. The difference between Auburn and Michigan State is Auburn just has too many elite guards for either of those teams to handle. Like Pettiford, Miles Kelly, Denver Jones, just too athletic, too quick, too fast, too good. Couple that with the fact that you've got Broome, Cardwell, and Cheney Johnson in the low post. That Michigan, you've got Wolf, you got Area 51 with Wolf and Golden, but you're playing a draw with Auburn with Broome and Cardwell, and then the Auburn guards are just going to dominate those Michigan guards. Same thing with Michigan State. Michigan State's a little bit more of a smarter team. They're a better rebounding team. They're a little bit more of a solid team than Michigan. They remind me of Ole Miss in the SEC. In fact, they played Ole Miss, and Ole Miss, as you all know, played Auburn pretty tough in the SEC tournament, but just not enough firepower to have more points on the board than Auburn in that game. And that takes us to the Florida versus Auburn matchup, which is going to be incredible. So right now, when you look at this matchup, so when Florida has the ball, Florida, we've got the number 2 offense. Auburn has the number 8 defense. Absolutely incredible matchup. When Auburn has the ball, Auburn is the number 3 offense. We've got the number 10 defense. Again, good on good. These two teams complement each other in so many different ways, um, including the fact that Todd Golden is the mentee of Bruce Pearl. Bruce Pearl gave Todd Golden his first job, major job in college basketball. When you look at this game, the one thing that I will say that was interesting about the first game is Auburn is a team, when you watch them play this season, when they know, and you can kind of look at their faces, they're sort of an emotional team. They kind of wear their emotions on their shoulders and on their faces. When Cardwell is smiling, when Broome is calling God, when Chad Baker Mazzara has got a big smile on his face, and Pettiford is more of a cool cat. Same with Miles Kelly. But when those guys they got that look on their face, you're in trouble because those guys know they're faster, they're quicker, they're better than you. And what's going to end up happening is they're going to end up beating you by double digits. And that's the type of team Auburn is. But when you've watched Auburn in games that have been close or games that they've lost, they don't have that same emotion. And when we played them the first time, um, they didn't have those same kind of emotional responses because when you play Florida, it's an even matchup. Auburn's guards are not that much better than the Florida guards, and Florida guards are not that much better than the Auburn guards. The big men, uh, Janai Broome, Cardwell, and Cheney Johnson match up very evenly with Condon, Chenyelu, Hauk, and Hanlockton. The difference in this game is going to be two things. Number one, Elijah Martin did not play in that first game against Auburn. Urban Klavjar played. Now, Urban Klavjar hit 3 out of 3 threes. So I'm interested to see, are they going to play him? He has not played the last couple of games. He had a couple of issues in the first couple of games, against UConn and Maryland, where had the ball stolen from him, committed fouls, could not. They're picking on him defensively, but he can make open shots. So it'll be interesting to see, is Klavjar going to be playing in this game, or is it going to be Elijah Martin for the majority of the game? like we predicted to be. Martin, Denver Jones, Chad Baker Mazzara, Will Richard, um, Pettiford going against Walter Clayton Jr. This is going to be an incredible, incredible matchup. Um, and then when you look at Janai Broom, Broom can back you. Broom can get whatever shot he wants. He can back you down. He can shoot threes. He can, do a little running floater. But we know that our center, whoever is playing our five, Condon, Handlockton, or Chingalu, are going to be matched up on Broom. Cardwell is not a back to the basket, back you down type of low post guy. He's more of a um, he can get offensive rebound and put back and defense on the interior type guy. Cardwell, I've said this before. I think he's the best rebounder in the SEC. He's like a black hole when the ball is anywhere near him when it comes down. Cardwell is going to get the ball, and so our ability to box him out with I don't know who's down there, but we can't let him rebound. Janai Broom is also an incredible rebounder. So the rebounds are going to be key. The team that rebounds the ball um, the most in this game is going to win this game. When you look at offensive rebound percentage, this right here, this is huge. We rebound 38.9% of our um, misses, which is fifth in the country. Auburn 34.4, which is 48th in the country. Our turnovers are a little bit up there. Our effective field goal percentage, effectively even, effectively even. Um, so this game is going to come down to a couple of things. Number one, can Alex Condon repeat the same performance he had against Auburn in the first matchup? And if we go back and take a look at when we played Auburn the first time, let's just go back and take a look at this game and take a look at the box score. Condon had 17 points and 10 rebounds, 7 of 10 field goals. If he can have a similar game, I feel very confident in Florida winning. If Condon is a little bit off in this game, maybe he's not 100% healthy. Condon and Broom both had ankle injury scares in the Sweet 16. They both came back in the game and finished the games and played. So I'm assuming both the guys are going to be healthy. But Condon's performance is going to tell you the story. If he's able to get a double double in this game, I'm picking Florida to win. If Auburn controls Condon and he doesn't go off, Auburn may have the advantage in this game. Walter Clayton Jr. also scored 19 points, hit 4 out of 8 threes. Obviously, Walter Clayton Jr. is going to be at the pinnacle of what Auburn is going to look at in terms of um, what their focus is going to be on this game. Um, I really think that it is too difficult to just try to let's double team Walter Clayton Jr. or whatever the case may be, because Florida does have other guys like Will Richard and Elijah Martin and Denzel Aberdeen and Clavjar, if he plays. Halk will play a significant amount of minutes. Um, let's see if those guys are on and can hit threes. The one thing that will be interesting about this game is that it's going to be played at the Alamo Dome, which is a football stadium. So the depth perception on your threes is going to be a little bit off. So let's see if both these teams can come out firing and hitting their shots early in this game. That's going to be huge. When you look at Broom, so Broom, 18 points, 11 rebounds. Cardwell, 12 rebounds. Only scored 5 points because, like I said, he's not really a offensive. He's not going to do like a Darion Williams performance. So I don't think we have to worry about that. But in terms of his ability to rebound the basketball and kick it out to Broom or kick it out to Miles Kelly or whoever is just tremendous. So Cardwell is the guy that we have to just make sure that we're boxing out. Denver Jones and Chad Beckham actually did not have a good game against us. You can kind of see Denver Jones did not even make a shot in the game. He did make two free throws. Miles Kelly uh, had a great game against us. Pettiford, he had a decent game. I mean, 4 out of 11, 14 points is a decent game. But, it's going to come down to Alex Condon's ability to assert himself in the paint. Micah Hanlockton also did not play. He was not cleared until a couple of weeks after this game. So that's going to be key. Condon, Hauk, Clayton Jr., Aberdeen off the bench. Um, this is going to be a tremendous opportunity for Florida to come out and win this game. Now, I will tell you this. I think that Florida has played to the level of their opponents in the last few games in the NCAA tournament. I think when Florida tips it off or jumps it off with Auburn, you're going to realize, okay, Auburn's a little bit of a different level of team. They're faster, they're much more athletic. They've got guards, they've got bigs. They're a really smart team. I think you're going to see our team put forth an elite effort. So whoever wins this game, I will not hesitate to say earned the win because this game is really honestly a coin flip at this point as to who's going to win this game. I'm going to pick Florida to win it. Obviously, we're Gators, we're Gator homers. I think Florida's last couple of games where it's been close and Florida's got the confidence that, hey, we can win a close game. We have a closer in Walter Clayton Jr. And even if it's not a close game, like let's say we're up by double digits, we can finish the job. We have not allowed any team this year to come back on us while we've gotten a lead. We've always sealed the deal. And I just have a feeling Florida has more ways to win this game than Auburn does. I have looked at Auburn since playing us. So both teams have played about 15 or 16 games since this first matchup. Florida is 15-1 in those 16 games. The one loss came against Georgia, where we were down by 26 points, outscored them by 28 to take a 2-point lead with under a minute to go in that game. So we've come back in all those games in the last 16 that we have been trailing. Conversely, Auburn is 11-4 in their last 15 since the game against Florida. And when you look at this team, they've struggled against Ken Palm top defensive teams, top 10 defensive teams in that span. Auburn lost to Tennessee, who's a top 10 defensive team. Auburn also lost to Alabama. Now, Alabama's not a top 10 defensive team, they're top 26, but Auburn lost that game. Alabama has a number 4 offense. Auburn also had a loss to Texas A&M, who also has a top 10 defensive team, and also had a relatively close game with Ole Miss in the SEC tournament. Ole Miss, as you can kind of see, is a number 22. So you combine a good defense with a really good offense, it makes Auburn question themselves a little bit. I'm going to go with Florida. I have believed in our team, but honestly, it's a coin flip, but I'm going to go with the Gators. Really quick, guys, I do want to take a look at the Duke versus Houston matchup. This is just going to be an incredible game. Like Duke, look at this. Duke has not lost since, well, they lost on the road at Clemson. Um, uh, Ironically, the same day that we beat Auburn, Duke lost at Clemson, but um, they've won every single game since then. And then when you look at this Duke team analytically, they're one of the better teams in the history of college basketball. In fact, Ken Palm, when you look at the top 10 best teams all time in Ken Palm history, all 4 of the this year's Final Four teams are in that top 10. Duke is the highest ranked of those teams. They have just been buzzsawing teams. Now, I personally thought that I would see a little bit more of a competitive effort against Duke given the fact that they played in the ACC and they were dominating a lot of ACC teams, and all these ACC teams are not really that great, as you can kind of see, like 81, 111, 107, 193, 91, 72. Like they weren't playing any Ken Palm top 50 teams in the ACC, except North Carolina. And the North Carolina game, they beat them 3 times, but it was like the closest game of all the ACC games that they played, other than the one they lost to Clemson. Um, Duke dominated Baylor, but Baylor was really not, like Baylor or Gonzaga. Like who are you gonna pick in that game? Like Gonzaga, right? But you get Baylor, Duke beats them. Arizona uh, gave Duke a little bit of a game, a 193, and obviously Alabama defensively is just not up to par to be able to beat Duke. So Alabama got steamrolled a little bit. This game against Houston, guys, is going to be incredible. The Duke players, Knipple, um, Malawach in the paint is a beast. He reminds me a lot of Akpara from Tennessee from the defensive standpoint and his ability to catch alley oops and dunk it. Except Malawach is a little bit better offensively than Akpara, which is troubling because if Akpara from Tennessee had any kind of offensive ability, putting the ball on the floor with his back against the basket, Tennessee would be a completely different team. But that's the kind of guy you got with Malawach. Proctor is an exceptional freshman guard. Oh, and by the way, I haven't even mentioned, uh, Cooper Flagg, who is just an exceptional player. Now, Cooper Flagg, I think Thomas Houck and Cooper Flagg are similar in that, what they bring to the table for the teams. Like they both play at the four, they both can shoot threes, they both have decent handles, and they both are around the same height. The difference between Flagg and Houck right now is Flagg is a little bit thicker, he's a little bit more physical, and he's got a little bit better handles. And so I say that to say, if Thomas Houck, I'm hoping he comes back next year. I actually sat next to his mom at the Texas Tech game, and I could see where Thomas Houck gets his uh, intensity as a player from. 100% his mom. She is incredible. She's literally the smartest basketball parent that I've ever sat next to. Like every single moment of the game, intuitively, she knew, hey, we need something right here. We need to make something happen right now. I was just like, yeah, we need to make something right. She's incredible. But anyway, if Thomas Houck gets more physical, puts on a little bit more weight, and develops handles the way that Cooper Flagg has, Thomas Houck is probably an equivalent talent to Cooper Flagg in the next year or 2 years to where Cooper Flagg is today. Cooper Flagg obviously is a little bit further ahead than Houck, but if Houck can improve his physicality, his handles, there is no limit to the game that he has. That is why I'm saying Houck can be very similar to Flagg. But for right now, given what Duke brings to the table, it's hard for me to pick Houston. But Houston, it would not shock me at all if Houston beat Duke. Houston has an incredible defensive team. LJ Cryer is absolutely an incredible guard. Milos Uzan, I forgot what team he transferred to them from, but he's exceptional. Jawan Roberts is going to be playing up against Cooper Flagg probably. He is incredible. Emmanuel Sharp, if he's wide open shooting a three, this guy is going to make it. This is going to be an incredible. Both these games are going to be incredible, but uh, I'm picking Florida and Duke in the national championship game. That was my pick going into the tournament, so I'm going to stick with that. And we'll see what happens. I will be in San Antonio, and before I go, um, I wanted to show you guys um, some quick pictures of the game. So this was me right outside the Chase Center right before Texas Tech. This is Todd Golden. I don't know what kind of play he was drawing up, but we were not doing too well at this point in the game. You can kind of see the players are paying attention to him very intently right here. But Todd Golden drawing up some plays. I do want to say this about Golden. I think Golden has shown throughout the season that he's an incredible coach, particularly from a player development standpoint, as well as a overall how he's constructed the roster and the style that he's played is very strategic. However, um, McCaslin and Hurley, I do think going into the game against Florida had better game plans than Todd Golden. They put together a game plan to counter what Florida brought to the table. And I think that caught Florida off guard a little bit. So I think if you're Todd Golden, and it kind of showed Todd Golden's youth a little bit, in my opinion, because we said Hurley was going to shoot more shots. He was going to eliminate Florida's ability in the paint to have any contribution from their bigs. The same strategy is what McCaslin did. We got 15 more shots off than Florida did, even though they got more free throws. We were able to neutralize them on the offensive rebounding advantage. And if we're able to do that, we got a really good chance. So I'm interested to see if Todd Golden is able to put together a really good game plan for Auburn and whoever he plays if we were fortunate enough to beat Auburn and go to the national championship game, because I do think Hurley and McCaslin assembled better game plans than Golden. But Golden, his strategy of the type of roster he has, the stylistic, the ability of the team to, at the end of the game, in the last 2 minutes, 3 minutes of the game, to just be a more physical team, that ultimately won Florida those two games. Oh, and by the way, Walter Clayton Jr. having a Walter Clayton Jr. type performance, in addition to Thomas Houck coming up huge for Florida in that Texas Tech game. But I'd be interested to see the game plan for Florida that's drawn up by Golden, because we cannot allow Bruce Pearl to have a better game plan than us going into this game, because that would spell disaster for us against Auburn. Here's a picture of the boys with the Final Four banner up. There's a pic of the floor, and there's me with the West Region Champs sign in the background. So that's going to do it for this episode, guys, of SwampCast. Like, subscribe to our channel. What we're going to do, should we win the national championship, we will be doing another recap video of the Final Four as national champions. But either way, Logan and I will be back on next week recapping our incredible basketball season, which was absolutely insane. And I will be in San Antonio. I'll be looking forward to us hopefully winning against Auburn, and then playing either Duke or Houston. And hey, let's see what happens. But making the Final Four is a huge accomplishment in Todd Golden's third year. This sets the program up huge in terms of NIL, recruiting. We can go out there and say we're a Final Four caliber team. We're 34-4, for crying out loud. We've beaten 10 straight tournament teams. Oh, and by the way, we played 2 KenPom top 10 teams in the Sweet 16. Oh, and by the way, the other 2 teams, Tennessee and Alabama, we played in the SEC tournament. So 4 KenPom top 10 teams we've had to play in like the last 6 or 7 games. So this is just incredible competition that we're playing against. Um, so I'm interested to see, guys, what we can do at the Alamo Dome in San Antonio. We'll be bringing you a reaction regardless. Like and subscribe below. Peace.